All right, we've got some more breaking news out of New York City. Daniel Penny is found not guilty in the New York City subway chokehold death of Jordan Neely. Let's go to our partners, CBS News New York, for this breaking news.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Moore. We interrupt programming with breaking news. A verdict is in the Daniel Penny trial. Penny has been found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. Penny is the Marine veteran accused in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely on board a subway train last year. Over the last 8 weeks, jurors heard testimony from more than 40 witnesses, including subway passengers aboard the F train, police who responded, a Marine Corps instructor who taught Daniel Penny chokehold techniques, and Penny's relatives and friends. Penny himself did not testify during the trial. His attorneys say Penny was trying to protect other riders while Jordan Neely was making threats and acting erratically on the train. Prosecutors say Penny intended to protect riders but used too much force, gripping Neely's neck for nearly 6 minutes, which prosecutors say was past the point of him posing a threat. The chokehold death, as you remember, sparked protests last spring and debate over how the city responds to mental health emergencies. The two charges originally in this case were manslaughter in the second degree and criminally negligent homicide. You might remember on Friday, the jury came back deadlocked twice. Prosecutors then moved to drop the top charge of manslaughter. Here's a look at that verdict sheet. After dismissing the superseding charge, jurors had to decide if the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Penny caused the death of Neely, did so with criminal negligence, and was not justified in his actions. Jurors were allowed to take Penny's character into consideration when they weighed that character against all the other evidence. The jury in this trial is anonymous, made up of 12 people from Manhattan, a diverse group, 7 women and 5 men. We want to take you live now to the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Tim McNicholas is standing by. He was there when the verdict was read outside. Alice Gaynor is inside the courtroom. Tim, we heard reports earlier of protesters outside. What's the mood there outside the courthouse now that the verdict has been read?
You know, Jessica, just about 10 minutes ago, NYPD actually used barricades to divide 2 groups of protesters behind me. I'm not sure if you can see these officers back here, but there are 2 groups of protesters. There's a group that is supporting Daniel Penny. They had megaphones and signs in support of Penny. And there's also a group that wanted to see Penny convicted. Those people were actually chanting earlier today, and that came up in today's proceedings in the courtroom. Penny's defense team expressed concern that that group was maybe chanting so loud that the jury could hear them. And the judge actually expressed the idea that maybe he could move the jury to another room because of that. But right now, there are some protesters chanting. You can hear them right now behind me. They've been out here all morning. They've been saying things such as no justice, no peace, and they want justice for Jordan Neely. Jessica.
Position. You're a little bit removed from the very front of the courthouse, as the NYPD often does with us reporters. But can you hear them still actively chanting right now, or does it seem to have died down?
I could hear them right now, for sure. I just heard a little bit ago, no justice, no peace, a few minutes ago. So it's definitely continuing. As you mentioned, Alice Gaynor is in the courtroom right now. She said that when that verdict was read, there was applause in the courtroom, and she also heard people asking for quiet after that applause.
McNicholas, thank you again. Daniel Penny found not guilty of criminally negligent homicide. Alice Gaynor is still inside the courtroom. She'll be joining Tim whenever she is allowed to leave. Here to further break down the verdict is legal expert Mayo Bartlett. He's a practicing attorney, former DA for Westchester County, and was also an active member of the state's hate crimes coalition. Mayo, thank you for the time. I have to get right to it. What's your reaction to this verdict? When the jury came back deadlocked on manslaughter Friday, that seemed to suggest at least one juror might have been leaning guilty. Are you surprised at all by this not guilty verdict?
Well, I think that for the reasons you stated, yes, I am, because if you're deadlocked on manslaughter, which is the more difficult charge, then it would lead you to believe that at least one or more of the jurors could be leaning toward a conviction of criminally negligent homicide. One of the issues is also that sometimes jurors are given a particular time frame for a trial. And as the case goes on, it becomes a little less likely that they will maintain their position and that they generally will go toward the position of some of the stronger advocates in the jury. That being said, these are not the easiest charges for someone to reach a unanimous verdict on. And when you look at the fact that you're going to consider the conduct of Mr. Penny, along with his history, along with his training, and the suggestion that Mr. Neely was threatening to people, that all can make it more difficult for a jury to reach a decision.
If you don't mind, for our viewers, just to sort of break it down in simple terms, the difference between those two charges, the manslaughter in the second degree versus criminally negligent homicide. We know one wasn't one the maximum prison sentence 15 years. Now this one would have been 4 years had he been found guilty. So a big disparity there. But what's the difference in what prosecutors had to prove between those two charges?
Well, it's looking at the mindset of Mr. Penny. And so for the manslaughter, you would have had to have basically shown that he was reckless, that he really knew or should have known that his conduct was going to cause serious injury or, in fact, the death of Mr. Neely. For the other, it shows that he's negligent, but again, it goes beyond mere negligence for like a car accident or something in a civil arena. And you'd be looking at negligence that rose to such a level that a reasonable person would have known better than to engage in that conduct. So the question really now for a jury in particular is, did holding Mr. Neely in that chokehold for that length of time, which sounds like not a lot of time to us, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, we can debate that, even 2 or 3 minutes, but ultimately really is a long time if you actually stop your clock and listen and wait during a period of 3 or 4 minutes, whether that was unreasonable and whether that was likely to cause his death.
Right.
And that's the issue.
Okay. Speaking in a more broad sense, this case really sparked a lot of racial tension across the city. These jurors were 12 Manhattanites. They were told not to watch news coverage. We have to assume that they followed the judge's instructions, but they've lived through the aftermath. Most of them probably took the subway. How much do you think that played a role in their decision making?
I think, unfortunately, you hit a really great point that we cannot really divorce ourselves from our lived lives. And so when people are on TV, you go on to a subway and you see what happens on a subway, it's really difficult to ask a juror to not consider any of those things. And really, you're asking them to look only at the specifics of this case. I think it's unfortunate that it becomes a racially tinged case. Mm-hmm. I think part of it was the delay in arresting Mr. Penny in the first place and the way that the police handled his interviews in the beginning. Right. And I think that sometimes it may even be done properly, but the impression that the public gets may be something other than that. And I think that I just would caution that without having all of the details, it's very difficult for us to sit in the role of a juror. So we get a chance to see what
this rate.
And that was CBS News New York covering the breaking news out of there. Daniel Penny found not guilty for criminally negligent homicide. Here's the press conference with the victim in this, Jordan Neely's family. Let's take a listen.
Responsibility to give it to them. If we see someone cold, to give them a coat. If we see someone going through something, to ask them if they're okay. That's how we help each other, because we can't rely on the system to do it for us. And clearly, if we get to this point, it's too late. We have to be there for each other, and that's our call to action. Everybody that's pissed off at this verdict, I challenge you to go outside today and help one person. Right on. That's my challenge. If you're angry, if you're hurt, go help one person. That's how we beat the system. That's how we turn this around, by being there for each other. Right on.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged. Mm-hmm. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Let's do something about it. Too often, we have Eric Garner's mother here. There's too often this is happening where we're left alone in this society. We got to stop that. We have to change how we impact each other. Jordan came on that subway car. The first thing he asked for was food, and he was killed. And the person who killed him was not held responsible. We cannot allow this to keep happening.
Come on. I got you. Oh. Looks like the police are attacking protesters.
Good morning, everyone. Here we stand once again in front of this unjust system. I stood here 10 years ago because they did not give justice to my son with the chokehold. Mm-hmm. I fought hard to get the anti-chokehold bill passed, which did pass. But it shouldn't only be for police officers, it should be for civilians also. No one deserves to be choked to death. And you know, we're in that courtroom and people are cheering for the verdict. They made the loudest noise, the judge did nothing. But when his father spoke out, they put him out the courtroom. Is that justice? Or what? We can't allow this to keep going on. We have to fight this system. That's what I had to do. I had to fight to get the little justice that I got. I got one police officer fired. There's more that need to be fired. But I tell this family, do not give up. Because that's what they want you to do. They want to discourage you. Just like they tried to discourage me. But 10 years later, I'm still fighting. And I'm not only fighting for myself, I'm fighting for families like yourself. That's why I have to come out when this injustice is done. If this had been the other way, if your family had murdered this so-called innocent guy now, it would have been a different story. He would have been in jail or would have never came out. But they don't do the same to us. It's two justice systems.
You know that.
And we have to stop this. And the only way that we can stop it is to stand together. Those of us who are against what happened, we have to speak up. We can't treat this just like another news story, not another press conference. We have to speak up, and stand up. So I just say today, we did not get justice once again. And I am saddened. I am truly saddened by this situation because it keeps on happening and no one is standing accountable for their actions. So that means that any civilian could get on the train if they feel threatened and they could choke someone out and they're going to get found not guilty, just like today. This sets a precedent. And we can't let this happen. If the police can't do it, the civilians can't do it either. And I just want you to stand with this family. This family needs you right now.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to Dre. I'm sorry to Chris. I'm sorry that America has failed you. You've come here. You've shown discipline. You've shown strength. You've shown love. You've shown how to carry yourself with composure when you're facing this machine, this American judicial system that cannibalizes our people. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to say it loud and clear. Let the marchers march and let the steppers step. Let the marchers march and let the steppers step. You want to do something about this verdict? Then you go into your neighborhood and you promote black unity. Black people, we are all we have. This system protects every other group except for the very people that built this country.
Say it.
Every group that comes here gets privileges, gets benefits, except for the very people whose fingerprints are on the bricks that built this country. There is no love for black people. There is no love in the system. How can you make a moral appeal to a people that have no moral code? How can you preach love to racists? That got Dr. King killed. How can you promote love to a nation that is built on theft and genocide?
That's right.
What we preach is unity, black unity. Stop begging this system to justify our lives. Stop begging this system for justice. When things happen to you, you step up and defend yourself. Just like everybody else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us? I'm tired. I know you're looking for us to be like, oh, go and march, go and march. No. This weekend, I want you to hold a community event everywhere from the Bronx to Houston to Seattle to Florida. Black people hold community event and talk about what you need and talk about how to fix your issues. If the black politicians come, don't let them in. If they come, do not let them come and take over your fight for justice. Why? Because out of all the black politicians who said something about this initially, none of them came to court. I'm sick of these people playing with our lives, our children's lives. Black people, if you are serious about yourselves, you'll take your education serious. You will open schools in your community. You will take your health serious and teach your people about health. You will take your self-defense serious. And you will defend yourselves in your communities. You want to take the information that's disseminated seriously? Then you will start your own media outlets. Because if America knew that Daniel Penny lied to the judges 5 times, lied to the cops 5 times, if they knew that all the people jumped off the train who were afraid within 30 seconds, and Daniel Penny choked them for 5.5 minutes, if they knew the truth, everybody would be on the side of justice except for the racists. The people who are happy that Jordan Neely is dead. Unify yourselves. We will be putting out information on how to unify yourselves, but this ain't about us. This is about justice. So there'll be no more Eric Garners. So there'll be no more Jordan Neelys. So we will be a united front and a community. America will never save black people. Politicians will never save black people. Only black people will save black people. Hawk Newsome, HAWK-NEWSOME.
Shavonna Newsome, CHIVONA-NEWSOME. I'm the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. And I'm a devout Christian. And in my Bible, thou shalt not kill. In the Torah, thou shalt not kill. In Buddhism and Hinduism, thou shalt not kill a living thing. But America has no moral code. America has no souls. Our bloods have paved the streets of this nation since its inception. It was foolish of us to think that a black man would get justice in a system designed to keep him oppressed. My heart bleeds for the Neely family. My heart bleeds for his father, who sat in front of me every single day and prayed for justice for his son.
And if you are just joining us here on CBS News 24/7, Daniel Penny found not guilty for criminally negligent homicide. That's the lesser charge in the deadly chokehold death of Jordan Neely on a New York City subway. Now, last week, the jury was deadlocked on the more serious charge of manslaughter. Let's go to CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson now. We were just hearing from Jordan Neely's family. Jessica, what is your reaction to this verdict?
Well, my reaction is it's interesting because, and we heard a conversation before, typically when you see a jury deadlocked on the more serious offense, and they were deadlocked on that manslaughter offense, then you know there is at least one person in the room who's comfortable convicting on manslaughter. We know, of course, they dropped the manslaughter charge, meaning the prosecution asked to dismiss it. The court agreed. And when they went back to the jury room to just consider that lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide in this case, I think it is fair to assume that some people entered the room ready to convict. So something happened pretty quickly, frankly, that turned this jury to a not guilty verdict. And again, I think we will hear from the jury eventually. They will be polled, but we know just by definition of the fact that they were deadlocked on manslaughter, one person in that room was comfortable convicting on the more serious charge, and now we think flipped to a not guilty for the lesser charge here.
And it's important to note, Jessica, there's actually another case going on, a civil trial or civil lawsuit against Jordan, from the Jordan Neely family. What can you tell us about that case?
Well, that case, it's a really important question. It's a completely separate case. I think that's the most important thing for people to know. It is a civil case. The family sued in court to try to obtain monetary damages, which is really the only remedy available in this type of civil case. So there is no jail time on the table. And we do often see this where there is a criminal case and a civil case that run essentially in parallel. The civil case, we should note, has a much lower standard in order to find liability, because we're not going to take away somebody's freedom like we would in a criminal case where you have to have a unanimous verdict, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Instead, for a civil case, it's a much lower standard, typically of more likely than not. And so we could see a jury, and this is just hypothetical, but we could see a jury finding liability in a civil case and a separate jury finding not guilty, as we did today in a criminal case. And that doesn't necessarily mean that anything strange happened. It means these are two different types of cases.
Now, will the outcome, though, Jessica, of this criminal case impact the outcome of the civil case, do you think? Or no, they really are looked at as completely different cases?
They should be looked at different cases as different cases. Sometimes attorneys do try and bring in a verdict in a civil case. There are evidentiary issues, which we could talk about in detail with respect to introducing that. It's basically something called hearsay, but it depends on the specific type of motion, what the judge would rule with respect to that evidence. But to your question, it's a different case, same set of facts, but different allegations, different standard of proof, and obviously a different remedy.
All right, CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Thank you so much, Jessica, for that insight.